conflict. So the situation is really dire.
Well, let's go now to Tol Heinrich, a spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Tol, thank you so much for your time this evening. I first want to get your reaction to the UN saying that one of its facilities sheltering Palestinians was hit by tank shells and that this killed at least 9 people.
Thank you for having me on Azadeh this evening. I don't have details about this particular incident. I know that the IDF is investigating. They're also not ruling out the option that this was a Hamas fire. As you know, since the war began on October 7th, more than 2,000 Hamas rocket fire fell short inside the Gaza Strip, causing damage and casualties. And the BBC previously reported about such incidents. So we will have to wait and see when more details about the incident emerge. But we don't target civilians or civilian infrastructure, of course. We only target terrorist infrastructure in Gaza.
Right, but you just mentioned that, and we've also just heard my colleague Mark talk about the fact that one hospital in particular, the Nasser complex there in Khan Yunis, is surrounded by fighting to the point that people who are sheltering there, and patients as well, are unable to leave. What's your response to that?
Well, as you know, Hamas, unfortunately, uses hospitals for its protection. They're using hospitals as shields for their war machine. Again, I'm not talking about specific military activity, operational matters that are happening on the ground right now, but since the war began on October 7th and the IDF has put forward much evidence of Hamas's cynical use of clinics and hospitals to serve their war machine with tunnel shafts and tunnels underneath. Unfortunately, this is what they have done for 16 years, embedding themselves in and underneath civilian population. They think that hospitals will give them immunity. Israel, on our end, we're doing everything humanly possible to avoid, civilian casualties, minimize them, and also minimize the civilian suffering in Gaza as we progress in this war and towards the goals that we have defined.
And Tol, so your response to the statement from the US, though, saying that it's been urging Israel to avoid civilian casualties, that's something that President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been having sincere discussions about, haven't they?
Indeed. We talk to our best friends in Washington. Jerusalem and Washington, there's no daylight between us in what pertains to the goals of this war. The mission statement, as we defined it on October 7th, rather October 8th, maybe I should say, is to eliminate the Hamas terrorist regime, to bring all hostages home, to make sure that Gaza will never, ever pose a terror threat to us again. And while we do it, to also minimize the collateral damage to the possible extent. Of course, every civilian tragedy in Gaza is a civilian casualty, rather, is a terrible tragedy that we want to avoid. But Hamas is doing exactly the opposite. They want to maximize the civilian suffering and casualties. They want Israel to take the fire for their sick methods of war.
Tal, sorry to interrupt there. We don't have that much time. You say there's no daylight between the US and Israel. I do want to ask about the fact that President Biden is pushing and has insisted on a two-state solution for post-war Gaza. What does your government believe that President Joe Biden has got wrong about that?
Well, President Biden has got it right, actually. He said just over the weekend that there are different types of two-state solution. We, on our end, say no to the type, which means that it will imperil Israel's security. Peace with the Palestinians or full Palestinian sovereignty down the road cannot mean a collective public suicide of Israel. That is not peace. And we say that for the near future, Israel will have to retain the security control.
Sorry, you said collective public suicide. What do you mean by that? The Palestinians, do you agree they should have a say in what that two-state solution or that mediated solution should look like?
First, let me say this. Hamas does not want a two-state solution. Khalid Mashal, he just said it in a podcast, Hamas leader just a few days ago. He said that Hamas does not want a two-state solution. In fact, what Hamas wants is the final solution, just like in the Holocaust. So first we have to
what happened October 7th was a tragedy.
Future.
It was an absolute tragedy, and Hamas waged brutal attacks I just wonder what you think about the Palestinians having a say in what post-war Gaza would look like.
So the right conditions have to be in place before we can seriously talk about a durable peace. Now, what my prime minister has said, and not only he said it before October 7th and after October 7th, and this principle has become very prevalent and popular among many Israelis. In fact, the overwhelming majority of Israelis support it, and that is that the Palestinians should have all of the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten Israel. Because think about it, Azadeh, what would it look like, full sovereignty to the Palestinian people? Should leaders from Iran be able to touch base on Palestinian soil and Hezbollah training camps, let's say, in the area
I do
of the
apologize.
West Bank
I do apologize for interrupting. Fortunately, it's live television and we've run out of time, but I do appreciate your time, the time to speak to us this evening. So thank you, Tal.
Thank you, Azadeh.